Kirsten and Mark talking about shows and whatever comes to mind. He's in space, she's on her couch, and they talk all the time.
Hey, stop it. That was good. Did you see that?
I'm so excited. This was like another great episode.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot happens. Yeah.
Oh, moly. But, like we talk about so often, this show does not waste any time. Every episode is like, oh my God.
Oh, man. But no, that's just really seeing that instrument was really exciting because it's like, oh yeah, I want to get something like that at some point.
Yeah, I yeah, I agree. I clearly do because I have one, but I think I'm gonna exchange it for another one that might be a better fit for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited to, or not excited to go out in these Rona streets because I'm bubbling hard. But I am excited to know that the process should and has been easy going the Coles route.
Mm-hmm.
No complications. Money shows back up in my account. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Man, when you're able to do a smooth return or a refund or something, it's such a relief. Like, man, am I gonna be stuck with this? Just like clean slate. You're like, oh man, this is great.
It's so nice, especially when they're like, or they're not like giving you a hard time about it along the way. You're like, I just want to return this thing. I already am a little disappointed about it. The reason I'm returning it. That's sad enough.
Yeah.
Also, I like don't go to Kohl's very often, so it was like cool to be up in Kohl's and be like, okay.
Yeah, I don't know the last time I've been in a Kohl's.
I feel like Kohl's is similar to a Marshall's in
Mhm.
that you don't go to them very often. I think for many people,
Mhm.
there are some like probably folks who go there regularly, but
Yeah.
for those of us who don't go regularly, it's I don't know if an in between style store is the way to describe it. I'm not even sure what I mean, but it's got like a generic variety of clothes, but also it's pretty good. If that was the only place you could shop, okay, not
Mhm.
bad. Similar to like a Marshalls.
Mhm.
And they also have like random aisles, and that's kind of my favorite part about each of them.
Mhm.
And they're sometimes like on clearance or just like this mysterious aisle of like flavored popcorn oils, non-slip socks, like random things that you're like, I need that.
Or like a decorative skull that you can put on a table.
Yeah. Yes. Although that came from Joann's, and that was random too, though, because there was only one. I was like, is it magic? Was it placed here and left for me?
That's funny.
Oh my goodness.
That's very funny. You go to check out, it's just like, this didn't have a tag on it or anything. And the cashier is just like, I don't know, just give me like $5. I'm like, okay, great. You take it home and start talking to you. Anyway.
Oh my God. I mean, that would be amazing and magical first. Secondarily, because it's flat bottom, does not have the mandible, which is your bottom part of your jaw, it would be even more impressive because it doesn't have the part of the skull, or at least one of the major parts that you need to form communicative language, if you will. So I'd be like, magic and impressed.
Mm-hmm.
As I continue to like glance over at it like it's gonna start talking. Oh man. that pink sweater, is that soft? What is that? What does it feel like?
That's a great question. It's not like especially soft. Not quite sure. I'm not quite sure, but I will find out what it is made out of.
Yes. Do a do-si-do.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, it is easily worn both ways without looking strange. It still looks the same.
Yeah.
Doesn't say? It might be on the other one that's like on one side or the other on the...
Yes, yes, it is. Uh, 100% cotton. 100%.
Okay. Excellent, excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Does it looks the same both ways, which is like, hey, good to know, right?
Yeah.
Because some things you just like can't wear backwards and forwards, like crisscross of the popular 90s boys group / duo would be in dissent of that idea of not being able to wear things forwards and backwards. But this one definitely works.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool to have a shirt like this because, not gonna lie, probably more than I should. I think I leave the house with my shirt on backwards, you know. And depending on the shirt, maybe even inside out, because I have some shirts that do look similar. Either way,
Yeah.
So it's happened before, you know.
It happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
My brain was like tap dancing back around to like a food discussion, and hearing you talk about the like orders you get delivered, whether like Grubhub, I'm not sure if you've said like Uber Eats or Grubhub or whatever it is, not sponsored, but shout out. I don't think ordered in. I'm still planning on like finding a open. Oh my gosh. Do you remember the place? This is maybe a hard left, but it's directly related. Do you remember the dumpling place where on Buford Highway? I think that Ruben introduced everyone to low key.
Yeah.
Maybe Tom, but I think it was Ruben initially because it was like a small group, and then like a bunch of people started going, and I am obsessed. But then I showed up, and it was just closed with a note on the door, maybe like a year and a half ago. You remember that?
Yeah.
My soul cried.
Yeah.
And because I couldn't read what the note said, I had no idea if they were closed forever, if they had moved, if they weren't closed permanently and they were just like getting remodeled. I was just like lost. But I saw, I think on Instagram or something, I recognized the name. It's the exact same name. I think I don't want to crunch it up and try and say it now. I'm going to go into my phone though, because it was in it was in someone's stories who I follow, some maybe Atlanta based food friend of sorts, right? An eater. And so I replied in the story. So I think it's in here. Yes, the Atlanta food blogger. Yes. I was just like, love, clap, clap, clap. And I replied to the story and I was like, they used to be on Buford Highway, right? Bunch of emojis. I wonder if it'll show me the story. Maybe it's been too long. It's not showing me. Oh, okay. The name is further down. And they replied, they still are on Boo-High, is how people call it, I guess, and write it. They still are on Boo-High, but they opened a second location in Kennesaw. And her post was about the location in Kennesaw. And so that made me think, okay, the note was, hey, we're moving. We're opening in Kennesaw, TBD, stand by.
Yeah.
But apparently, I feel like I'm already at a 6 count for saying boo high in the last 2 minutes. But apparently, the Buford Highway location never closed. They just went to like, they closed temporarily or something because they were closed when I showed up and there was a note on the door. Maybe the note was just like, we stepped out for 5 minutes, we be right back. But I don't know what it said. And I know that I was never able to find it open again during normal open operating hours. Anyways, so I was like, what? I used to go, and then I started typing boo high. I think we're at an 8 count now. I used to go to it on boo high, and about a year or so ago, I showed up one day and they were closed with a sign on the door, and my heart and stomach slowly cried. Sad face, cry face emoji. Either way, I'm so happy. And she was like, for the longest time, Lanzao, I think it was Lanzao something, and then maybe the American or English name underneath what read Golden Barbecue, I believe,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
But she replied, for the longest time, Lanzao on Boo High had a takeout only setup, but they reopened for dine-in again. Maybe, and that feels like she's talking about these Corona times.
Yeah.
So I'm just so happy, and I think because that one's really close to me, Mark, which is dangerous and convenient. Oh man, I had to pivot it because I was gonna mention how I haven't ordered anything. I will like order it on my phone and then like mask up and go and pick it up or
Mhm.
curbside or like walk up to a little window or something. But I haven't like ordered to my door anything in these Corona times. I don't know why. I'm not sure.
It's one of those things where it's like if you don't do it, it's very easy to not think about it. Like, I forgot how long it was before I did like a to my door like restaurant food delivery order once all this stuff started. It was a relatively long time.
But
And
it
then
was only during the quarantine or Corona times that you, because you said it was a long time before you started, but it still sounds like it's rooted in these Corona times.
oh, so like yeah, so like before Corona times, I think I'd order food in fairly regularly, I'd say. Yeah, like kind of regularly, especially like I mean, it's not very healthy, but it's just like, you get home from like a bunch of shows and sometimes it's a little easier to like if you're definitely going to eat after a show and it's late and places kind of close up, so you can like order from a place as you're driving home and then beat it home, you know what I'm saying, like if you don't necessarily like feel like start cooking when you get home. And then when Corona times happen, it's just like I'm home all the time. It's very easy to cook and generally speaking way cheaper, so it's just kind of easier, um unless it's like I don't know, there's some exceptions, but that's kind of why there was like that long gap.
Yeah.
And in that long gap you're just like, oh, I'm just not doing that anymore, I'm a new person. But then you do it once and you're like, oh, that was kind of cool. And then depending on the app, they're like, oh, he's back. And so then they'll start sending you like these coupons, or if you use them right, you can save some money, so it's like cheaper than it normally would be. So, but I'm very excited about Lanzhou, the rest of the name being back, because their menu was great. Because like you could do the soup dumplings, you could do, they had like this beef thing. It was like this almost like a beef pancake. Is that right? What was it called? It was like, I don't know.
I
But
don't
they
the I might be starting to have some idea of whatever beef cake you might be talking about. I know I remember the additional like leek pie
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is right with
Mhm.
looks kind of like just green onions, which I think there are some in there, but it's like
Yeah.
90% leeks, and I love leeks. Hashtag I love leeks. Not leaks in the ceiling,
Mhm.
but leeks as far as the food. Let's just
Yeah. Yeah.
LEEKS. So that leek pie was fire. I can't think of the beef pies, but I'm sure they had. I'm sure they have whatever it is you're thinking of, right? They have so much and for a great price.
Yeah. I think I wound up going there like 2 to 3 times before I also was under the impression that they had closed. And um and yeah, I was just kind of impressed by just the number of things that they had there that were all really tasty, you know? It's a bunch of stuff. Cause yeah, I think northern China eatery is similar too, in that like there's like 4 or 5 things on that menu. I mean, there's probably more, but I'm saying like there's 4 or 5 things on that menu that I've gotten that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
And I felt like this other place was like that too, in that like a lot of good options. So you can kind of have like a different dining experience depending on like when you go, you know? So,
I fully agree. It's
mhm.
like you can always like mix it up and get like a couple staples. Like I know for myself, and I think you may be in line with this, like so many people are. Soup dumplings is often a staple that you like, I'm getting this no matter what.
Mhm.
What you getting? These 8 for me. I'm gonna eat these 10. You gonna get you some? You should. They're real good.
We've been out for soup dumplings several times, and it's funny because it's like we're sharing some items for sure. It's like, you want to split that? You want to split? Share? Great. When it comes to soup dumplings, it's like, all right, how many are you eating? How many am I eating? Great. All right, now it's
Like when you're playing spades and you gotta check in with your partner. How many books you got? Okay, okay, okay. Are you sure? All right, think about it now. Cause you can't be like changing your mind past this point. How many you got? Yeah, for sure. And it's like they're so good and the perfect size. And I say the perfect size individually, right? Just a whole mouthful of deliciousness. And I think they often come in like one order is like 6 or maybe 8 typically. That's kind of the perfect size for like sitting for like
yeah.
more than a child, of course.
Mhm.
8 might sound like a lot to some of the viewers, but it's like they're not big individually.
Yeah.
I would say if you get lucky and you go to one that's still a great price, that still gives you 8 per serving, but they're like a little bigger. Showcasing my little squishy thing again. Sometimes they're pretty small.
Mhm.
I find that super small is not as satisfying. I feel a little cheapened when they're too small. I'm like, now you're just cutting corners. Let's
Mhm.
get it together.
Mhm.
And they often don't have enough soup inside. As if they're too small, you can only put so much soup slash liquid slash stuff in there to start. And then as it cooks, some of it's going to evaporate and or leak out. So then by the time it makes it to the customer, it's going to be sometimes kind of dry in there and not a lot going on. But you don't want them too big either. Sometimes you have texture, sometimes they're too gummy. Super some places, like we know, and many people do, are so good. You find like a place that does them right. And Lanzhou was definitely one of them. I've never had a bad soup dumpling there. And I got to a point where, because it's so close, I don't want to exaggerate, but every once in a while, I'd go twice a week. Um, but the being very timid with a statement could still be, I became a once a week regular over there. Like we recognized each other when I walked in. I saw it in very many different stages, got to know some names, and we were like, I would take my laptop, I would sit and eat and work for like 2 hours because it was like magically never busy. But then I thought to myself, oh no, are they closed because they were never busy? And the thing I loved about it is what killed it. It was so quiet most times because it was popular on like the weekends.
Mhm.
I just got on like a soup dumpling soapbox and now I'm so hungry.
Oh, it's great. It's delicious. You know, I know I'm not traveling right now. Kirsten, you're probably not traveling right now. But whenever that is a safe thing to do again, um, there's a franchise of this spot called Din Tai Fung, and it's a little fancier. Um, and I realize that maybe for some like soup dumpling purists, I don't know like what the norm is, but maybe it's like a little more on the fancy end than like for your ideal soup dumpling. But they do soup dumplings and like a lot of like dim sum. It's so tasty. I've been to one in Seattle when I was visiting my brother when he used to live out there. And then the last time I was in LA, they have one in LA. They're in like not random, but they're in certain cities. Georgia is not one of the states that it's in. Anyway, but like they have, I know, yeah, for sure. They it's a fun soup dumpling place for sure. It's cool though because whenever again, not traveling right now, but when I do travel, it's fun to kind of see like, is there a good soup dumpling spot in town? Because you never really know where you're gonna find them. They're in random spots.
Yeah.
Um, or even just dumplings. Not soup dumplings is kind of fun because it's kind of like a fun experience of eating them.
Yeah.
And before I like looked more into how they make it, I'm just like, how do you even make a soup dumpling? How is this even possible? How did they trap the soup inside the dumpling? You know what I'm saying? It's just like it's like the first time you have Dippin' Dots.
It feels like someone should sit you down and tell you the tale of how soup dumplings came to be. They have such a magical, wonderful quality because they do make you go like, this is so good and so like exactly what I want. How is this done? Because I need to know. And I think if I'm not mistaken, and I don't think they would probably be exactly the same, but I cannot knock it till I try it. They also sold frozen orders of some of, or maybe most of their meals or um, menu items, including but not limited to the soup dumplings. I never ordered any frozen. I think that they had them frozen though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds right.
This is dangerous. And exciting. What a delicious tangent.
Yeah, great.
How did we even get to or all stemmed from like food and ordering and
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I had to tell you that news though. That's because I just had that dialogue with that food blogger just recently. So I was like, oh, new news. Catch that liquid you. New news. Language skills. New news. I love language.
Language is fun. That's true.
Let's see. What did I was gonna try and remember to say something. I should have told Alexa to remind me. Oh no. She think I'm talking to her now. Never mind, Alexa.
When should I remind you?
Cancel that reminder.
You have one reminder. Remind me to pay bills. You want me to cancel all instances of this reminder?
No, no, keep that reminder.
Remind me to pay bills on the first of every month at 1 p.m. Cancel.
Did you hear her?
I can hear. This is what I hear.
she's pretty awesome.
Mhm.
And so is a Siri, right? I'm like down with the digital reminder, the voice command. I'm into it and I'm here for it. And I encourage and support it. Get into it, people. You do discover some of the not necessarily pitfalls, but things that they do better than other things, like things that just also are pitfalls of using it. And one of them is like I have a set reminder just at the first of every month to like, hey, just a reminder, it's the first of the month, pay all your stuff, right? Um, but I can add additional ones. And so like I can add one for just like remind me in an hour to check the mail, right? Like I can add them whenever additionally. And then they're done when the reminder happens. And I go, okay, great. Thank you for the reminder. You can turn off that alarm.
Mhm.
But the one thing that I found that just happened was because she thought I was talking to her. She was thinking I wanted to set a new one, but I wasn't. So I was like, no, just cancel that. And what happens when that communication happens is she goes, oh, great, you've got this standing reminder. You want me to cancel that? And you go, no, keep that reminder. And then the reply is, okay, pay bills first of the month has been canceled. And then you got to put it back in. you know, Very first world problem. Very like, oh, you're upset that this digital voice doesn't do all the things. No, not upset, just like observant of that thing.
It was fun.
Oh my gosh. Anything else?
Mm,
There's like other things we want to touch on.
well, I did kind of like quickly speed through this new sketch show on Netflix called Auntie Donna's. It's this sketch group that I think is based out of Australia, I want to say. And I think the sketch group's been around for a long time, but they recently got a 6-episode season on Netflix, and it is very, very silly. I like in a good way.
Oh.
And um, uh, yeah, I thought it was just like really fun. And this is in no way like a critique of them at all, but it's like very silly in that it doesn't really, to me, when I watched it, it's not really like referencing anything that's happening in the world right now. You know what I mean? Which isn't like,
And it's made right now. It's not like they got a show based on footage shot and captured pre-corona times. Like it's not addressing things happening now and it's being shot now.
it feels like it was shot before the corona times.
Okay.
But I don't know. Because it feels up to date, you know. I just thought it was just very funny. It's just kind of interesting because I guess like not all comedy that I like, but a lot of comedy that I like is like what's happening right now. You know what I mean? Or like what's going on? Because I think that's also important. And sometimes when something's very silly, I'm just like, well, why do I care if this is just silly? I'm gonna forget about it. But I feel like, but that's not how I felt about this show. I thought it was very silly and very funny, and it had like a unique take on sketch comedy. And something I thought that they did really well was, so like a lot of times when you watch a sketch comedy show, it's like a sketch, another sketch, another sketch. And so it can kind of feel like hit and miss because you're like, well, I like this one sketch, but not the other one. Mm-hmm. They do a good job of seamlessly going from one sketch to the next. So only on occasion will they like hard cut from one sketch, and then now we're in a different place watching something else. Each episode does have like a beginning, middle, and end to it, and they're kind of like seamlessly going from sketch to next. Yeah. So they're not there thinking like, oh, I like that one, I didn't like that. You know what I mean? Like
there feels like more connective tissue between each episode's sketch arc.
Yeah. It feels a little bit more like watching a sitcom than watching like a traditional sketch show. But what you're watching are definitely sketches, you know. So I thought that that was a like a cool achievement on on their part. And I think that, you know, Netflix, I'm trying to say this carefully. I think Netflix was smart to release it when they did, because not that the things that we've been talking about are not still important. You know what I mean? Like just everything that's been like kind of pushed to the forefront over the past like 6 to 8 months.
It's
It's not
almost nice that this silliness is a distraction, which sometimes isn't a good thing, but it's like totally not important.
yeah, I felt like, yeah, I think it was like the right type of distraction that came out at the right time. So it's like, I think it came out like after the election, for example. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, you realize that the work is not done, but like, I am open to the idea of like this brief pause or whatever you want to call it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like I use the word distraction. Yeah, like I use the word like distraction and respite carefully, in that like I realize these things are not stopping, you know, but at the same time, as far as like when I'm choosing what to watch for like 15, 20 minutes at a time, watching it now at this particular time didn't frustrate me as much, you know, as being like, I don't care about what these three dudes are doing. You know what I mean? Like that would sometimes like be like a response that I might have, but that's totally not how I watched it at all. Instead, it was like, wow, what an awesome, funny sketch show that doesn't really seem to pull so much of its content from current events. I think also them being from what I believe is Australia probably has maybe part to do with that, you know?
Like the comedy style is slightly different also.
I think so. It's also produced by like, I'm blanking on the person's name, so I apologize because he's a great comedian. But the person that started Comedy Bang Bang, he's like a producer on it. Ed Helms is a producer on it. Maybe someone else. So it also does kind of have like that, excuse me, it seems like a pretty seamless blend between like American alt comedy and then like whatever this sketch group already had going on, you know, and kind of like fusing that together.
I like to see, I don't know if Shaun of the Dead is a good example, but like comedies coming out of different cultures and countries. I like experiencing different perspectives on comedy.
Yeah.
And because some of it, even internally here in these semi-United States, in regard to like, ooh, fun game, unpopular opinion. I've like never really seen a whole episode of Seinfeld that I've enjoyed. I don't, that type of comedy doesn't really make me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the like, what's that actor? Certain directors, you know, perpetually use the same kind of mix of actors for a series of movies, like the Luke Wilson? No, brothers.
Oh,
Crooked nose. He's more than his crooked nose, but
Owen
in
Wilson.
Zoolander, Owen Wilson
Mm-hmm.
is in a lot of this director's movies. Like, I'm not gonna get this title right, but like The Life of the Yellow Submarine or the Dog movie.
Yeah, yes. Life Aquatic was Steve's. Why am I blanking on this dude's name? Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yes.
Yeah, let me look up this dude's name.
I don't know why I'm blanking either, but like I've never seen one of those movies and been like, I laughed heartily and semi-regularly in some enjoyable way. Like I've never been like, and that's not a slight or a dig. It's just a testament to how like even within the country in which you reside, different styles of comedy ring with different creatives and different minds, right? But I really love enjoying and experiencing different cultures and countries' ideas of comedy.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Wes Anderson.
Yes, Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
That was gonna bug me. I think we are officially talking finally about what is it? Season 2, episode 6. Yes. It started with Hot Hot Fire, and like many of the season 2 in particular episodes, because they're strewn throughout time in this season, this one, like many of them, start with kind of a quick cut montage of one of the super sibs, quick background of when and how they landed in that time drop where they all got split up at the beginning of season 2, when Five jumped them all to avoid one apocalypse and then discovered another. So this one starts with Allison's like a quick montage of how she's been surviving. She was dropped into 1961, post first apocalypse, and her throat has been cut and she has not spoken from the end of season 1. She's still bandaged up in her, and it also tells us that the original timeline, which I think we've talked about, like not knowing exactly when it was, is 1989. We find that out in this episode. They say explicitly. So she has on her like regular timeline 1989 clothes, cut, bandaged throat, and drops into 1961, and it shows us what she's been up to.
Yeah. And 1989, I'll just kind of add some random facts. My brother John was born in 1989. Taylor Swift had an album called 1989. Can't say I'm familiar with the album, but I was familiar with the marketing because I guess they thought he'd want this album. And it's not that I don't, but it's also not that I do. But I'm very much aware that album came out. And so when I think about 1989, those are the first two things that I think about.
Oh my gosh, I love both of those things. Shout out to siblings, because there are a bunch in this show. So shout out to real life siblings as well. Those are a thing. And I don't know if I'd call myself a Swiftie, I think, as her fans are referred to as, but not a full-fledged Swiftie, but still a fan. I'm a fan of Taylor Swift, I think, as a person. Of course, I don't know her personally, but from what I see and how I see her portrayed and the elements of which I believe are truly, parts of what I think are a good person. She also is a super, super talented musician and songwriter, and I really enjoy many of her songs. She has a new album out, and it's like low key, and I think, if I have her name right, Republican Representative Kirsten, because we share a name, Kirsten Gildebrand of New York, I believe. We consume news. She mentioned the recent Taylor Swift album in an interview with Major Garrett on, what's the name of his show? Oh dang, I can't. Major Garrett on The Takeout every Friday on CBSN. Whether you're streaming, this is not sponsored, but I do want a job with CBSN as an anchor or some type of reporter. I love them. But on any streaming device, it's free to download CBSN News app. You can catch The Takeout, a tape show, and also simultaneously recorded podcast called The Takeout with host Major Garrett, and Kirsten Gildebrand, Republican representative of New York, mentioned that album. And I was like, okay, everyone loves Taylor Swift. You better get these fans, Taylor. Get them. Sweep them on up and make them Swifties. I love those rando facts.
I feel like Taylor Swift, regardless of like the music or whether or not you like it, I feel like she's at the point now where she's like undeniable. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You know, she's like, it's like she's got hits on hits on hits. You know, that's what it is.
I fully agree. Even if you don't like her, you gotta give it up. Girls got hits on hits on hits. You can make your points all day, but then you got them hits on hits on hits. So I agree with you, friend. Yeah, shout out to Taylor Swift. Come guest on our show. Small channel. Big yes, yeah, yeah. One day we can dream. And dreams do come true. Fairy Godmother sang that in a movie once, so you know it's true. um I think it's we find out in the Allison montage of like what she's been up to up till now in this point in the season, and how she arrived and survived, that she like was running from some racist non-pigmented not gentleman, and ran into like the beauty salon in which she kind of finds refuge and safety. That's where the sit-in meetings in that timeline are happening and organizers are gathering. So that's where we find out she meets Ray, who is her husband in this timeline, for like a year's time approximately, when she like starts meeting people, like when 5 arrives, I think. It's been a year and they've like been married, and like you hear this in the earlier season 2 episodes, but we find in this montage all the connective tissue of her like survival and how she fell in love with Ray. I think the first time she spoke after healing in this timeline was to tell Ray her name, I believe. Because we see that like super meet cute of theirs. He asks her to dinner. It's like super cute. And it's also why in real time watching season 2, I don't know about you, Mark, I'd love to get your take. You cringe when you see their relationship falling apart due to the suspicion of the rumoring and all these like super sibs starting to appear, and all these questions of like communication and honesty between them as a couple. You're like, oh, it was so beautiful. And then you get reminded right here at the top of this episode how great it was and how it's going. But fear not, later in the episode, it starts to get better.
Yeah, I thought that it was nice for them to. I thought it was smart the way they placed this montage, because really, I mean, they could have done it at any time, you know. But I think it kind of made sense when, you know, their relationship is currently like in this valley, you know, where it's like there's. I think the last time we saw them, he's just like, you're a spy. You know what I'm saying? He's like, you're a spy. Who are you working for? CIA, FBI? And she's just like, none of them. And he's like, okay, well then explain it. And then she couldn't. And then that's just kind of where things like left off. And then I think, anyway, yeah, so they just kind of reached to this point where they just are having trouble communicating. So this flashback montage, I think, is nice in that you invest in them as a couple even more. Also, I mean, like, wouldn't that be a cool movie where a woman is sent back to the 60s? She meets a guy and then they like fall in love. I feel like that would be a great movie.
Is Sandra Bullock in one of those?
Oh, I guess I kind of specifically, I guess I meant more specifically like a Black woman goes back into the 60s and there's all that as the backdrop.
Yes, I got you. Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
But yeah, going back in time, Sandra Bullock.
It just sounded so her thing. And I was like, is that like something that came out in the 90s? Or am I thinking maybe of The Letter, where there's this magic mailbox that is connecting time? She puts a letter in there, but someone from the past reads it, and it's like Keanu Reeves or someone. I don't know.
Oh, maybe.
Not the same. I think your idea we need to hit up Jordan Peele. Come on, come guest on our channel, bro. Make black magic with us.
Mhm.
That's a good idea. I like your idea, Mark.
The short montage, I felt like if it were like a movie, I think that that'd be I think that'd be very engaging, you know. Um,
Watch it.
mhm. um, yeah, I was trying to think about like Sandra Bullock movies from the '90s. The one that I really kind of watched as a kid was While You Were Sleeping.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and I really like that movie. It's interesting though, as I grow up as an adult, when I go back and still enjoy and still watch those movies, I'm just like, like I shouldn't idealize these relationships that are built on lies. You know what I mean? Like there is so much lying that happens in these movies. And I'm like, I gotta remind myself, like, this isn't good. Don't, this is bad.
Yes, and you're so right though, because like some people's, dare I say, many people's kind of like, even not necessarily nostalgia connected movies, like, but also including those that we watched growing up, they kind of glamorize relationships built on lies. But even more modern movies, like Made in Manhattan, I think, with Jennifer Lopez. She's lying the whole time. The whole time.
Yeah.
One would say it's not always a female lead who is put in the place of lying, but many times it is. And I also think that that's something that has been subconsciously yes-anded in the worst way. Like, we've got to stop doing the small things like that. But I don't think it's always a leading lady in that role. I'm sure there are some examples of non-female identifying roles playing that part.
Well, I mean, like, to not go too deep down the rabbit hole, but like you look at something like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, you got Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson. They're both lying to each other to equal degrees in different ways. And so I feel like that's kind of done for the comedy, because it's like you get things like mistaken identity, heightening the lie. So I understand, like, from a comedic perspective, like the lies are great for the comedy part of the romantic comedy. So yeah, so I feel like the lying is in these movies to fulfill like the comedy part of the romantic comedy. And I think that that's fine. But I think what I have to remind my kid brain or whatever, that's like, oh, is this what it is? And it's just like, it's the ending of the movies where they're just like, where whoever chases someone down to the airport and they're listening, it's just like, look, I know we've been lying to each other for this whole movie. Now I'm ready to tell the truth. And we're just supposed to act like they're going to be good, when it's like, no, they're probably not.
My best friend's wedding, it didn't work out for her, right? She tried that moment. You try to come clean. I think it was literally that setup of a scene in an airport, or I could be wrong. And there's that moment where it's like, okay, I'm coming clean, and he marries the other girl anyways.
I respect that movie a lot because of that ending. And I feel like, yeah, I think the movie's so great. There's that moment where, oh man, the guy, what's his name?
The male role.
Yeah, so Dermot Mulroney is chasing Cameron Diaz. Julia Roberts is chasing Dermot Mulroney, and Julia Roberts is on the phone with her friend explaining this, and he's just like, Julia Roberts, stop! Who is chasing you?
Yes.
Julia Roberts, who is chasing you? And it's just like, so good.
I love reality injected into the world that is created for creative effect. The reality makes it respectable, at least in my view, because you're like, there are moments in movies and shows where you're like, that is not reality. That wouldn't really happen or does not often happen that way. And you go, someone needs to call bullshit, which is often just calling reality out for what it is. Like, say the thing we all know, right? Who is chasing you, bro? Stop. I also really respect that movie. And I love it. I love that movie. Do you remember the scene in that movie in the restroom where Julia Roberts has come clean? Because there's a lot of attempting to come clean, which I like in that movie. Recognizing the error in your ways, whether you still are passionate about the why in which you were pursuing your initiative anyways, that's still okay. But like recognizing the errors of your ways and coming clean to the people in which you need to do that. And so she's done that to the Cameron Diaz character, whose name is Kim, I believe. And so Julia Roberts is in the stadium, baseball stadium bathroom, I believe, because she followed Cameron Diaz's character in there, and she's going, Kimmy. And then she's just this older kind of crazy-eyed looking lady. And so every time Julia Roberts is like, Kimmy, the lady's like, Kimmy. And then she goes, Kimmy, 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 Kimmy. I love it. I love it so much. We catch up with Allison and what she's been up to in TUA. Yeah. I took a hard ride again because I don't know how to get out of it.
No, that's Kirsten. That's the right idea, because it's just like, if you don't get us out of it, I'll keep burying us deeper, because I'm not going to. But what I was going to get into next was the Netflix original Christmas rom-com, The Christmas Drop. And that's a whole nother thing.
I don't know what that is.
It's a Netflix original movie. It's a Christmas romance. So basically, it's a Black woman lead, which is pretty cool.
Is it out now?
Yeah.
Okay, I do know what that is. I didn't know the title, so I didn't connect it. Wait, unless, because what I'm thinking of is Jingle Jangle or
Jingle Jangle's a different movie. Yeah.
Also, multiple Black characters like in that one.
Jingle Jangle has like even more Black characters. Okay. The Christmas Drop has like a couple key roles, including the woman lead who is Black.
Sweet, I have to check it out.
Yeah. Well, you can. It's not My Best Friend's Wedding level good, but I also don't want to like lead us down this whole thing, because I know you made the great effort of trying to get it back on track, and I want to support that. You know what I'm saying? But I just don't want you to go into it being like, oh man, this is going to be another classic because Mark brought it up. It's not, it is what it is. That movie is what it is, and it's something different. So go ahead, watch it. I hope you enjoy it. Just know that I would not put it in the, it's not a top 5.
Yeah, okay? It's no My Best Friend's Wedding, although we need one of those. We're both available for hire.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
Wouldn't it? Like, we need a Black version of everything. I was about to take a left. There is a whole literature series retelling classic Disney princess stories with Black princesses.
Oh, that's great.
And it's so beautiful. It's so wonderful. Because there are often the tokenized ones for different cultures. But why not do all of the stories in all of the cultures? Not necessarily for all of the movies. That's a lot of production. That's a lot of, but like, mix it up. And I love it. I think we're still on the first bullet, like that opening montage. And then it took us other places of Allison's survival since she dropped in montage. We find out a lot though in that quick montage. And I think that's why it took us to so many places. Yes. So, and then we cut to 5, Lila, and the handler at the end of the scene we last saw Lila and 5 in, when he popped outside, saw Lila lurking, and followed in pursuit because he noticed she like jumped in time and space similar to him, and he was intrigued and he followed. And then they got into this fight scene that was really cool in this like place he followed her to. And at the end of that scene is where we last left them. And the handler had popped out of the shadows, and Five was like, I see you, you can come out now. So we're back to that moment in this episode. The handler tells Five, because we wonder this whole time, who knows what about Five and Lila's relationship? It seems pretty secret. The handler tells Five that she's Lila's mom and that there's a way to save the world from the second apocalypse, and all he needs to do is kill the board of directors of the Bureau. Is that what it's called?
I guess so, yeah. Just this group, this company that's bouncing around time, balancing the timelines.
It's like the Time Bureau, but I guess they call it the Bureau. It's where like she worked before she got shot, and she went back to, and Goldfish McGee was in charge, and like the three bad bros worked for the Bureau.
Five himself worked there. Yeah.
Yes, Five himself worked there. They are in charge of protecting the time continuum, which is important, but they enlist hitmen to do so when people mess with the timeline. Oh, and Hazel worked for them, but then turned good because he was like, there are bad things happening. We're doing bad stuff. Anyways, so yeah, and the board of directors, we find out in this scene, we cut back to with Five, Lila, and the handler. We discover that the handler describes them as, and shares with us, the viewers, and Five, that the board of directors of the Bureau are so secretive and nobody knows who all of them are, blah, blah, blah. And they only meet once a year, and they meet secretly in a different location in time and space that is not shared. It's like the biggest kept secret in the history of time, quite literally. And the handler knows the location, and she says, Five, all I need for you to stop this apocalypse, all you need to do is kill the board of directors in this timeline, find them in the timeline and kill them. Mm-hmm. And then I'll give you what you need to get all of your siblings back to your respective timeline. If you just do that little thing. Clearly manipulating him in some way, because the handler always has a plan behind the plan behind the plan. So that whole situation is very informative in this scene, because she dangles a carrot basically for Five. I can help you if you can help me.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. I kind of wonder what Five and the handler's relationship was like throughout time, just because Five is such a skeptic.
Yes.
It's interesting that he kind of like just goes along with this. I mean, he doesn't trust anyone. He doesn't like his own siblings. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just kind of interesting. After everything that's gone on, he's just like, okay, I'll go to this random secret time and kill these people, instead of asking like, the handler's my enemy. She wants these people killed. Why would I want them killed? You know what I mean? Like, it's interesting. Why wouldn't the board also be able to help? You know, it's kind of interesting. I'm not saying that Five is wrong for doing this. I guess he's feeling like a time crunch, all that kind of stuff with the apocalypse looming. But anyway, it is interesting, you know?
It is. And I think we even have that interesting quality about how and why Lila is so easily doing the bidding of her handler mother, knowing that they have a secret plan against the Bureau and in respect to the Super Sibs, not realizing you also were getting played from before you even realized. I was gonna share something I think that maybe happens in a later episode, so I didn't want to spoil it. But like, there are signs that she's been manipulated from the beginning, even if she's unaware of them as a character of Lila. But as the viewer, you're like, you're getting played too. Everyone's playing everyone, and the handler is kind of maybe not all knowing, but kind of playing a puppeteer role in regard to everyone, and that's dangerous.
Mhm.
So that scene ends. We cut to Luther, Diego, and Vanya at the Super Sid Batcave, which is Elliot's like electronic shop that he inherited from, I think, his father and lives in, kind of an apartment on the top part. And they're like having this discussion between them as Super Sibs with Luther, Diego, and Vanya about like how like their timeline daddy played them all, and they're telling Vanya like he's bad. He convinced you that you didn't have powers, drugged you as a child, like he made me this, he did this to me, like he's bad. And they're like, none of us is a leader, none of us is great, none of us is super, we're team zero, okay? And they make this like bond in this moment of this conversation, which is kind of like a very small, quick kind of scene, but I think it's just speaking to how they're also kind of crunched up in the head in relation to their relationship with timeline dad.
Yeah.
Another manipulator.
It's just wild, like, just, I mean, good or bad, right? Just like how much we're impacted, shaped, molded by our parents, whether or not they're there. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's really something.
There are so many things that parents do great and not so great, let's put it that way, at all, right? Not at all about like any specific parents, just like in general, the charge you have with raising a human into a good person in which you impart wisdom and do your best not to inflict harm. What a task for any parent. So there are things that are accomplished better than others, more intentionally than others. But then there are those things that are unintentionally and intentionally done that cause so many ripples of not great things. I always, or maybe not always, that may not be the best word to use, but I've seen the saying floated in regard to that of like, if you do not attend to the traumas of your childhood, your adult relationships will.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so true. It's like, because sometimes you don't even know what damage is done early on until it lands later. And you're like, oh man.
Yeah.
And I think they do a pretty good job in this show in both seasons, kind of displaying that element in the relationship and how it's transactional kind of for the dad role. And yeah, it's kind of sad and also super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we kind of cut to Klaus and Ben, and they're back at the cult mansion that he had abandoned but is now back. The followers are all there. He and Ben are kind of in Klaus's room, kikiing. And Ben is trying to like have this meeting of the minds of like, we always want different things. I just want the best for you. You need to come clean with this cult. You can't just come clean with them about the apocalypse. Like that's gonna destroy them. But you do need to come clean and tell these people that you're a fraud, and you quote modern musicians and they think it's scripture. They think you're Jesus or something, right? They think you're this prophet. And he kind of let slip that he cares for I think her name is Jill, one of the Black females in the cult that Ben has low-key, high-key fallen in love with from a ghost's distance. um, and Ben, well, Klaus is like, well, he tries. He doesn't think it's gonna work, but he walks out of the room that they're in to all the followers who are out there, just like worshiping literally the ground that he walks on, throwing flowers. And he tries. He says, I am a fraud. The things you think are scripture are Donna Summer, disco queen lyrics. I don't know what I'm doing. And they're all like, I too am a fraud. I too am a fraud. We are all frauds. You're right. And he's like, go home to your families. We are family. We are frauds together. We are home together. And he's like, see, I told you.
Which is interesting. And I want to be careful and sensitive when I say this, but it's like, cult leaders that are manipulating people, like they're manipulating people. So I'm not saying anything about that. But what is interesting in this moment is like, and I'm not really trying to make a statement about like cults, but more so like why someone would follow someone that is just lying all the time. Is that it's just like there are some people that just want something to follow, like,
Yes.
and so that, I don't know, I feel like, yeah, so that was an interesting moment where it's just like, it doesn't matter what he says, they're going to follow him to the end. So
you better speak truth to that. That is such a poignant point. Because I think some people just want someone to follow. There are those who would, I think, go as far as to think they need someone to follow in order to even have purpose. My purpose is to follow, or my purpose is to facilitate your needs. It is some mindsets that, again, not to comment on all cults, cults are bad. Cult leaders are typically bad, right? But like, even the manipulator has a hard time not manipulating people who want or need to be manipulated, aka servants to another. And they want leadership so bad that they need it. Such a poignant point. All that to say, I agree. Excellent observation. So yeah, coming clean doesn't work. And he's like, all right, I tried. We cut back to Ray and Allison. And finally, I was like, what just hit me? My top came off. Not my top, but my pen top. This is not that kind of channel. No, this is not Kirsten and Mark OnlyFans. Oh, that would be a funny sketch though, because it's so not that. How that would be hilarious.
like I wouldn't do this because it's just like it caused more trouble than it would be worth the joke. And I'm sure someone's already done this, but it's just like you start, and also I'm not trying to say anything about people that are on OnlyFans because like, that's great too. But I'm saying like, yeah, do your thing. But it would be funny, like, I don't know, like what if you like you started an OnlyFans page and then when you got on, you're just like doing this, like, all right, so we're gonna review some movies.
Right?
And that's it.
It's cutting out the middleman.
Yeah.
Even for comedy, like you can put up a comedy page and then say, donations are accepted at my Venmo. Or you can cut out the middleman and set up an OnlyFans, but also just like do whatever you want. That's not typically the content of OnlyFans. Like you could read some books.
I feel like that's gotta be a thing, right? I would imagine.
It has to be.
Yeah, that's got to be a thing, I would think.
Man, this
That
not
makes sense.
not sponsored by OnlyFans,
No, not.
but again,
Yeah.
fully supportive.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that makes a lot of sense. I don't know. Like at first I was just like, wouldn't it be? And I was like, oh, actually, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So finally, we cut to a Ray and Allison scene in this season 2, episode 6. We've already talked about how she's had opportunities to come clean. She hasn't. She does in this episode, and it is the release we all needed. Ray is like, all right, so you have superpowers. Okay, I hear you. And he goes like, prove it. Like, I'm of a skeptic's mind, and if what you're saying is true, and you have powers, you know the future because you're from the future and you've traveled through time, and you have this power you say you have, prove it. And then she does. They go shopping in 1960. I think it's 3 now in this episode's timeline. They go shopping in racist white America, small town McGee situation where there are colored only signs, and they, in this reality, are not even allowed to go into this shop. But they go in, and she rumors their way into trying on all the suits, buying bags of, threads for him, and then they walk out. They do the same thing. She gets some new digs. She tells him on the front end of this scene, okay, but like, it's not that easy. There's a price. And I think anybody else who's like into magic and just like into magic knowledge and shows and whatnot, there typically is a price with magic. And I thought it was interesting, being a magic lover and shows centering magic, to hear her say to Ray, and I think maybe for the first time in this show, to my recollection, the concept of there is a price to pay for magic, and to hear it referred to as magic. That was pivotal for me, or enough so to like note it, because that comes into play when she is rumoring during this day shopping spree. She then, because you see her eyes light up, and they each have a like thing that happens when they do their thing. It happens with Vanya too, I think, or maybe it's just based on specific powers. Anyways, she kind of gets carried away, and after both of them have bags and bags of clothes, because it's a small town, it's like the main strip of town, she sees the diner in which the sit-ins have happened and they have been beat and harassed at. She's hungry for rumoring, and Ray is like, no, don't do it. Not in a scary don't do it, but in a just legitimately concerned for like, this, okay, we've had enough. You probably, let's cut it off at the diner. Let's not go in there. She goes in, magic guns blazing, and she rumors the counter attendant in a way that at first you go, this is deserved fully and earned. Deserved by them, earned by all Black people ever. But you think she's just rumoring him into making him serve her at the counter. And at first it's just coffee, black. But then her eyes just get hungry, like in her face. It doesn't like change werewolf style, but you see her eyes and her mannerisms get real hungry for that room ring. Like it's an insatiable, like it's growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost kind of makes you think like, is that why she hasn't done it,
And why she doesn't do it even in the regular timeline very often, because you hear, I don't know what episode or what, I think it's this season, but I don't know what episode, I actually think it's in multiple episodes across both seasons. The other siblings reference in like out loud. They actually say she never even uses her power that much. So there are hints along the way that she doesn't use it very often. And like you just mentioned, like is that why?
Mm.
Not very often, regularly in the timeline, and especially there's been this huge gap in which she has not used her room ring in lieu of having her throat cut, but you know that there is something else also. And so
Yeah.
you definitely question that in this moment is, does it get this way when she does it too much? Um let's see. And so it gets to the point in the diner where she has him rumor and she keeps going more, more. And it's just a little teacup. It's just a little teacup, little coffee cup, little small, like not like the big old mug that you got. No, it's like maybe a quarter of that size, a teacup size coffee mug that he's filling a freshly brewed pot of coffee into. And as she says, more and more and more, it makes him, he's pouring hot scalding coffee onto his hand. You see it getting burned and burned and burned. And Ray is now more in a scary way going, Allison, stop. Allison, stop it. You're like, yeah. And there's a whole diner of white people watching. So at first you're kind of like, let him see. And like, but even as the viewer, you're like, Allison, stop. Like, you're losing ground now. So that's a interesting moment. And he touches her arm in order to have to shake her out of the more and more of the room ring. And then they get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
It is nice to see them communicating again, Allison and Ray.
Yeah.
Gonna say that it is so nice to see the happy couple communicating again, because I really hated to see them falling apart. But now he was like, come clean, and she did, and she proved it, and so I am happy for that. We cut to the scene with the handler and Lila. They are in a bingo hall playing bingo. Like legit playing bingo, not just like in the back corner of a bingo hall.
Yeah.
But actively playing bingo and discussing. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, like the handler catches on to, and Lila then confirms, I think unintentionally, she has fallen for Diego. And the handler makes it known that she's aware of that. And I didn't realize this. It may have been something we touched on or you noticed, but I guess she's wearing a bracelet from Diego. And it's like, that was dumb. How are you wearing that is something that you would wear of something you're following, like when you fall for someone, you start wearing trinkets that one gives you or that reminds you of I don't remember it being pointed out that he gave her a bracelet, but the handler notices that too. And I'm like, Lila, you are raised by the most manipulative timeline bureau person ever. How are you not aware that this wearing a bracelet of Diego's is not a good idea? I didn't even know she had it on, but they talk about it while they play bingo. And it is part of how the handler makes it known that she knows, and Lila low-key confirms, and she hesitates when the handler is like, well, if I told you to kill him, you would? And Lila hesitates, and the handler calls that out.
I forgot that detail about the bracelet.
I still don't remember exactly where it came from. Maybe it was specifically mentioned earlier in the season as they were falling for each other. Maybe post Boink, he gave her something in some pillow talk moment. I don't know. But she is wearing it, and that was dumb. Lila, you know better than that. You are a professional spy and potential super simp yourself. Get it together, girl.
Yeah.
because she told on herself,
Yeah.
and that's not good. She showed her hand. And then we cut back to Klaus and Ben, and Ben runs through Klaus, and I think a burst of passion of like charging at him, and discovers, seemingly for the first time, that he can possess a human body.
Yeah.
In this example, Klaus, because running through him makes Klaus go like, whoa, what was that? And Ben also doing it for this first time is like, what happened? What did I, right? And so there is a discovery that possession can take place.
Which is kind of interesting and sort of makes you wonder. Well, for one, it's interesting because it's like you're still learning more and more about what each of these super sibs can do, and what they're capable of.
And so are they, seemingly.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, just it's kind of interesting. Makes you wonder, like, oh, where is this going? Yeah, you know.
Yeah, it definitely makes you wonder. And at the like tail end of both of them trying to recover from this experience that neither one of them really knew could happen, and is like on the other side freshly of, they're both on the floor, but of course nobody but Klaus can see Ben. So as the viewer, we know they're both recovering kind of on the floor from this accidental possession experience. And at that moment, into that room comes Jill, the cult follower who Ben is in love with, secret, like low-key. And she is showing Dave into the room. Dave, Klaus's love, who he fell in love with in the original timeline. And last we saw, whose uncle was using a derogatory term towards Klaus and punched him. And like, that's the last we saw them. So Jill is showing Dave into the room, and it's funny. Jill goes, oh, we caught you praying, or we caught you worshiping, some term that, funny enough, I've heard used in multiple shows, because they think, because of how they see him, Klaus is on his knees, kind of recovering, having fallen to the floor, but they only see the back of him. So, and because of the sounds he's making, like, oh, what, oh, it sounds like and looks like they've walked in on him, like enjoying some private time, we will say. But that's not what's happening in this moment. And so that's just a funny moment. And they refer to it as that term, which I think is like, oh, we've caught you in the middle of worship. And so they're referring to private time as worship. And I've heard other shows refer to that as whatever type term as well. I'm going to try not to take a hard left, but mention the other show that I am thinking of.
Do it. It's like you know, you're a kid on a road trip and like, stop at the Six Flags, do it.
Do it. Stop at the teacup antiques. There's another show that is so good. I might have mentioned it before. It's called C. No? It has many leading roles in it, but I think the most notable one is Jason Momoa. It is in a future civilization, post-apocalyptic world in which everyone is blind. No one can see anymore. Like, humanity has, because of the amount of time and the world in which people are living now, people are born blind. 90, I don't know the exact number, but let's say 99% of people are born blind. And so there is a small percent of people who are sighted, who can see. but they are seen as very important and or very dangerous. And one of them who is cited in this show, the children he fathers, it's a male character, are some of those sighted. All of his children can see. And so all of the sighted can have children who can see. And he has them with someone who is blind. But because he is in the mix, they are sighted. So he is sought after, and those who are sighted are sought after in order to try and create more people who can see in this world where no one can see. So language is all Braille, and I say Braille, but it's a new type of Braille that's been created, and it's string. It's like knots, almost like Morse code and Braille mashed up. And so to read in language is like someone sent you a message, and then they would hand you like imagine a piece of fabric that had a series of knots, and so people would go, right? Because that is just what language is for. Anyways, the show is called See. It's amazing. And there are like subsets of survivors, different groups of survivalists. One of them is like the upper echelon. There's like a queen in this pocket of survivors who wants to be the queen of everyone, and kind of low-key is, because she's got a lot of power. A lot of dangerous people are, in her allegiance, blah, blah, blah. All that to say, she, as the queen, she takes prayer. And that's not just private time. That is a servant coming in to serve her worship, is to like, I'm trying to think of, is to service her, we'll say. So I guess they may associate it with her own private time of prayer as well. But in the show, she's like, I'd like prayer. And so someone comes in and then facilitates servicing the queen. So I just thought that correlation of hearing that in the Umbrella Academy, also kind of referred to as whatever term they use, is like, interesting. Is that a thing that I'm just keen to because I've seen a couple shows in which it's referenced? Interesting, right?
Yeah, I've never heard of that term used in that way before.
Yeah. Also, check out See. It's a really good show. I think it only has one season. It should have more. I hope it does. But it's really good. And just like the concept of post-apocalyptic civilizations is something I'm really into, because I feel like every civilization is some version of post an earlier apocalyptic survival, right? We are just survivors of an earlier time. Descendants of those who did not die in a myriad of different meanings, right? Anyways, check it out. It's called See. Maybe we'll talk about it in a later episode. Who knows? Even more than I just did. And then we cut away. We cut back to this scene and we catch up with like what Dave is doing there. Because last we saw, he and his uncle were not fond of Klaus. And I was kind of, as a viewer, you're like, Dave, because Jill is showing him in. He arrived, he found out where Klaus was and arrived to see him. And that's why he's there. There's a quick cut back to Ray and Allison back at their house after shopping spree, rumoring, and hot coffee incident at the diner. And as there's a dialogue between them, they've just gotten back. She was like, sorry about that. And he's like, well, he's kind of cautiously asking, have you ever rumored me? Like, why don't you do that all the time? What we could do, what you could do, what we could get done. And he thinks like to ask, have you ever rumored me? Is that why we're us? And she believably and genuinely says like, no. Yeah. But then he makes such a good point of like, but if you did, would I ever even know? which is true. And she can't deny it. She doesn't say anything verbally, but you see in her face and body language that like, no, you wouldn't. You don't remember getting rumored. That's not how it works.
Yeah, and it's tough because, you know, thinking about Ray's perspective, he's been married to this person and just now found out about this rumor thing. And that's also just after he found out about like all these other siblings that she's got. So it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still proud of them. They're doing
Yeah.
it is a lot though. Like Ray, it was real rocky. I didn't like the energy you were bringing to this marital conflict. It was not helpful. But we're in a good place now. They've come clean. He's asking tough questions. They're having difficult conversations, but they are getting through it, and it's great. And at the end of this little short cut back to them, we as the viewer see Ray recognize that there is a envelope on the floor, and it's an invitation that's been slid under the door that they're just now seeing is there now that they're home.
Yeah.
Excuse me. An invitation from that timeline daddy who has been sending these out, right? Yeah. Luther and Diego got theirs standing outside. The car was following them. It delivered it to them, a little gold seal. To my pursuers, right? The same invite.
To my pursuers.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
I need to start titling things appropriately like that. To my gaslighters. No, that's living in Pettyville, or is that Realityville? Do they share a zip code? Anyways, back to it. We won't put that part in there, or will we? So she gets her invitation due to Ray realizing that, hey, what's that? She picks it up, reads it. To my pursuers, she's invited. We realize as a viewer, they've all gotten one. We cut back to Klaus, and Dave has arrived to see him. He's like, how'd you find me? There's like this prophet pamphlet or something out there. So he saw one, found him, and that's how he's there. And he's like, I don't know how you knew all that stuff about me, but I don't believe it. I don't know what this is or what's going on, but like, I'm sorry that happened to you. You see that like Dave is a good person, has a good heart, is confused a little and just like not into this cult thing, but like seems like a good person and is kind of apologizing for his uncle's behavior the other day. And it's like, that's not me, who I am. And Klaus is like, I know you really well. I know that's not who you are. I know that. No worries. He's very cool. And then he tells him everything. Like he kind of already did in the diner. Like, I know you're gonna sign up and you're gonna die. And like he kind of tells him the hot topic items already, but he tells him again and he doubles down. He tells him like what his favorite color is, what his favorite food is, and he's like, how do you know this? He's like, I told you. I know you, and I know that you're gonna enlist. And then we find out from Dave that because the last time we saw them in the diner,
yeah,
we find out in this moment that Dave's uncle, because of that encounter with Klaus in the diner, instead of what Klaus's knowledge is of Dave waiting until the assassination, and that makes him want to enlist after the diner, his uncle took him to enlist that day. And so Klaus has changed history again, because they are affecting change with every encounter they have. They know they shouldn't, but they actively are like having lives and like encounters. So he's changed that part of history again already. Mm-hmm. He's already enlisted. He's like, you're not supposed to do that yet. That's not supposed to happen. It's already happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wild. That's got to be scary, you know, just because it's just like, you know, you're already in the past. Things are already weird. Things are already crazy. and then to know that you're kind of like changing events, it's just like you're even more in the dark because it's just like, well, does what you know about the future even help you if you're already changing it? So
Yep, and changing it with each new thing you've changed, you're probably going to do something that changes it even further, and it's like it's hopeless. Yeah. Oh, and right at the end of the scene, and David's like, I already signed up. You can keep my dead future self's dog tags, which Klaus is wearing, and says, This is you, man. This is all I have left of you. He shows him, he's like, what? And tells me he already signed up. And says, even if that's what you're saying is true, I'm doing it for the right reasons, and I'm still going to fight for my country. And one of Klaus's followers comes up to him at the tail end of that as Dave is walking away and hands him a delivery that has been dropped off for him, which is his invitation from that timeline daddy. We cut to the handler and the two bad bros who are left.
oh yeah,
One is dead, stepped on landmine
yeah,
when he discovered the planted by the handler, stolen by Lila, push dagger from Diego. So that was a whole setup to set up Diego. We know that. His picture was in the fake canister dropped off by the handler via Lila, and I think the last episode. And they're in, the handler and the two bad bros left are in the sauna. They have the dagger. They're on to Diego that it's him. The whole scene is in a different language. I think the bad bros are like Swedish or something.
yeah,
In
like
Nordic.
Yeah,
of descent with
that,
the like
that cluster of countries.
yes.
Yeah.
And I think she is speaking of their language because I guess I could have engaged subtitles, but there are not active subtitles in this sauna scene. But she is planting the seeds of, I know who it is. This is where they are. I know that dagger. I'm your friend. I'm here to help you get vengeance, blah, blah, blah. And so that's kind of what that scene is.
Yeah. Is lavender get mentioned a bunch in that scene? Is that where we are introduced to like the lavender scent that she has, or is that later or before?
Yes, I think you're right, because she has it, and she like, doesn't she have some lavender in there in the sauna?
Yeah.
Ooh, yes, detail. Let's see. Good call on that. Next, we cut to 5 and the rest of the Super Sibs who have all gotten their invitation, showing up at the location to meet that timeline daddy. And I love this part because when I'm watching a show or a movie, I don't know about you, but I love the moment where you realize where the title comes from, right? The title or tagline inspiration and or the show art is pulled from, right? That's this part, because the show art is of all of them in an elevator, but they have like glasses on, different glasses in the show art, but they are arriving at this location all seemingly at the same time, because I think the first person to arrive gets in the elevator, and right before it closes, you see a hand from the outside stop it, and then one by one, they're all getting in the elevator. So that's the shot. There's like a still in this scene that is the shot that makes the show art for season 2, I believe. Right? Are you someone who picks up on that when you watch shows also?
I don't know if I noticed that moment, but I really do enjoy shots of the whole cast fitting into an elevator.
Yes, and not to take a hard left, but just to touch on something we touched on, like the Wes Anderson world of creation. It almost feels like something that would fit into a Wes Anderson thing, like that quintessential, the whole cast in elevator situation.
Yeah.
But I also love it outside of Wes Anderson, because of course I mentioned that's not necessarily a style of comedy that resonates with me. but I find it interesting that our elements, like this elevator shot and scenes like that, that could tie into that type of comedy base, but are individually standing also.
I really like the place where they meet for dinner.
Yes, they go up to like it's a tiki lounge
Yeah.
set. It's got like a center round table. You can see other tables kind of in this. It's almost like if you go into a tall buildings restaurant, the layout is often different. There's like a center situation, and there's a tiki bar off to the side in this one, which is like a very unique setting for such a seemingly important meeting. But it's kind of nondescript, if you will. Way high up in the building. It's an empty floor. There's nobody serving, I don't think, or anything. They get out the elevator, they kind of walk out, sit down, and then that timeline daddy gets there and like comes in blazing hot, not with anger, but just like, okay, I've done recon and you guys aren't spies. I don't know who you are. Come clean. Tell me who you are. Why are you being following me? I know that you're not this, but I still don't know this. And it lends the viewer to believe like he's very smart, but he doesn't have any answers. And I don't think he's faking it because he came real clean, real fast about he does know they've been following him.
Mm-hmm.
He also knows Diego's been in the psych ward. So he knows some things that are find outable and reconnaissance, able to get through reconnaissance in that reality of that timeline. But he doesn't have future answers. He doesn't know future knowledge, and he legitimately doesn't know who they are. They're not his kids yet.
Right.
And I think there's been some ambiguity as to like whether or not he does know and what he will know up until this.
Yes, it was interesting seeing him not know something, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I would have assumed that he would, like
something. Because they also, as far as the super sibs go, like it's set up so much until this episode in this season 2 arc that they are dependent on him for answers to avoid this apocalypse part 2 / World War 3, and he doesn't have these answers. It's made very clear. So as the viewer, you're like, they're about to get real disappointed, and now what? Like, because we also already know that 5 has been presented with an offer to help the handler and avoid the apocalypse. So you see an option being taken off the table for them, and you see an option for him particularly being removed because he's running out of options, and he is the driver of getting them out of this situation. Driver in a good way, and he's running out of options. So when he's saying like, I don't know who you are, tell me who you are. And they're like, we are your children. We all have superpowers. You adopted us in the year 1989. And that's when we find out this actuality of when season 1's timeline is. And we can all do special power things. And he's like Ray, prove it. Show me. Because that's ridiculous. And they're like, what? And there's a moment when they're kind of explaining this, like, well, there are 6 of us, technically 7, but 1 is not here. And they're like, it's not that he's not here, he's dead. And then Ben being there in the shot for the viewer, he is the 7th adopted super sib, but there are only 6 there physically.
Yeah. So
you hear them in explaining it, kind of explain that, and in real time watching, Ben is like, but I am here. He's like, Klaus, tell them. And again, like earlier in season 2, and potentially in season 1, even though we have a lot less of Ben, Klaus opts not to share the knowledge that Ben is and has always been there, if not physically, but metaphorically. Like as a ghost, he's been there the whole time. So I thought that was interesting that the dialogue did not end up on the cutting room floor. it's again left in that Klaus and Ben are communicating, and Klaus is opting not to share that he's right here.
Why do you think that was? Because I'm not like.
I don't know yet. And I say that knowing I don't know, or I say that thinking, I don't know if we'll ever know. I don't know if they're going to tell us why he's doing that and opting not to share with the other siblings or anybody else that Ben is there. In some situations, it makes sense not to tell, like the pool hall scene where
Yeah.
they need to cheat to do poker things or whatever. Some of those cases, it makes sense and it tracks and it doesn't make you question it. But these instances, it's like, I don't know. I'm not sure. If
Mhm.
you're a viewer watching our channel, if you have read a conspiracy or like can tell us, put it in the comment. They all start to show him, the ones that can access and engage their powers. So Diego is the first one to show his, and we've talked about Diego and like, is what his power is presented as all that it is, like the bending of projectiles and like avoiding getting hit. And just being good with projectiles, but like the bending of the projectile itself is kind of the meat of his. And so he often, without any notice, is just like and throws it straight at that timeline daddy, and he curves the projectile as it's going straight for him to go like around him. So he kind of shows his skill. 5 jumps through space and time to the other side of the table. Allison rumors Diego, because again, in this scene, when they say what Allison's power is, this is one of those moments where they go, but she never uses it, right? They say that as super sips, and I think it's Diego who says it in this scene. And so Allison shows hers by rumoring Diego to punch himself, and it's hilarious. Yeah. And Timeline Daddy's taking notes on all of them as they do them, right? And then Vanya is like, oh, okay, I'll do mine. And they're like, no, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe not. Just, trust us. She's got a big one. But she's like, no, I can do it. I can do it. And so she's got this, like, she taps, almost like trying to make an announcement. You tap a glass. But she does it very gingerly. She taps this little glass on the table and it like explodes the centerpiece of the table onto everyone. And then Diego pulls out a still from the Franklin footage of the shot of what they think is that timeline daddy on the grassy knoll. Mm-hmm. And then, oh my gosh, that timeline daddy cuts Diego down with words so hardcore. It physically slowly sits him down as Diego hears these words. Like, and it is the most like beautifully, eloquently strung together, intellectually poised set of words of a diss to someone who is seen as like a father to son, right? Even if that timeline daddy doesn't know, realize, or believe it. It is not hard to watch, but it's like so cold. And even the siblings watching are like, whoa. I feel so bad for him. And then that timeline daddy doubts what they're all saying about a new apocalypse and a pending World War III and then an assassination, or he doubts it all. And out of seemingly nowhere, Ben, Ghost Bro, is like, fuck it, I'm gonna give it a go. And so he jumps into Klaus's body and jumps in with an intent to stay in. He like, not forever, but not through him. He intends to jump into his body. And so you see Klaus being like, blah, 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 blah. And so Ben tries to say, I'm Ben, but it like takes a big old toll, and then Klaus ends up on the floor and they're both recovering again. Luther tries to show his, right? He's strong, bro. It's like, what are you gonna break something? But he stands up and rips open his shirt. He goes, "This is what you did to me," or like, "Look what you did to me," because he's all like hairy and apey and like super muscles on muscles, and everyone's like,
Yeah, it's kind of wild, just like how quickly it all falls apart, just like instantly. Yeah.
yeah. Dim family dynamics though. And then yeah, it falls apart. And then that timeline daddy like gets up to leave and he's like, kind of like, "You're all a mess. This is thanks for your time, pursuers. 5, can I talk to you?" And he doesn't call him 5, but he's like, "You time jumper, whatever, a moment." But like he pulls him aside and the rest of them get back into the elevator to leave. And Klaus has to be like carried in because he's still recovering. Diego is just fully dejected. Vanya is like, "Are you okay, Diego?" Like everyone is just a hot, steamy mess. When the rest of the 5 go back down and get off the elevator, Diego sees Dat Mamoto, right, in real life because she's alive in 19. I think this is what 60, maybe 2 or 3 currently in this episode. Is it 3? 63?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Something like that. But she's alive in this timeline. She's a robot in season 1. We don't know why she's a robot. We don't know why she's not around. I just thought of that. Like, how is she a robot in season 1? What happened to Damamoto? We don't know. And I'm very intrigued in this moment. You can see the real-time surprise on my face. I'm like, oh my gosh, realization. But when they get off the elevator and go outside to the parking lot, Dat Mamoto is sitting in the car waiting for that timeline daddy. I guess they came there together. He left her in the car and she's out there waiting for him while he's upstairs talking in this meeting and now talking to 5. And Diego knocks on the window because he sees her and he hands her that grassy knoll still of what they think is him on the grassy knoll. And he goes, "Your boyfriend is like not who you think he is. He's a bad guy. He's going to kill the president. And just ask him. If you don't believe me," which she doesn't, "then you ask him. Ask him and like challenge the truth. See what he says. Ask him." So I was like, okay, Diego feeling better. Got a little pep in your step. Feeling excited, telling people what to do.
I felt so bad for Diego and all the kids, really, when, you know, I don't know. It's just like they're all grown adults. They all have like the benefit of coming from the future, so they have this very valuable information for them. None of that matters. They can't I guess 5 does get some one-on-one time with the dad, but generally speaking,
yeah,
it's like they can't get through to him at all.
They can't catch a break.
Yeah. Diego in particular, though, Diego in particular is just like constantly disrespected by this dad. Oh man.
And like low key by the siblings too. They do I think they do digs on each other due to being siblings, but you're right. That dad just gosh, constantly being cut down in both timelines. In both timelines, in both seasons.
Yeah.
It's sad. I feel for him. Again, I'm rooting for Diego. I hope he gets a win. More so than the sideways win he thinks he has with Lila. He's gotten laid. They're falling for each other, but that's tricky. That's not a true win. That's a spy. Sorry to tell you, friend. I think you're kind of onto it, but hope you enjoyed Boinkville. Because your house is up for sale. And yeah. See you next time. Right? It's just they all need to catch a break, but he definitely the viewer just feels so bad for him. So yeah, he thinks he's like got this win with Dad Mamodo because he's like calling out the dad to her. He didn't win talking to him upstairs in that meeting, but he can do this to her. He can crush her ideals of who she thinks he is. He's not a good person, whatever. And then outside once they've left the elevator, we also see that Lady Farm McGee is outside in the parking lot and Vanya's like, what are you doing here? And she's like, this showed up for you at the house. And it's Vanya's invitation, but she was with the other Sibs when they got there. So she was already in tow. So she never actually got hers, but it was delivered to the farm. So that's how Lady Wife McGee is now in the parking lot outside of this meeting place. And she's like, can we talk? I don't like how we left things. We're maybe all familiar with one of those moments in life. And it's like, what is this about to be? Because Harlan Sr. is back from being out of town and sleeping with Lady Wife McGee again, because that's his wife. Things are complicated there. So she wants to talk.
Yeah. That makes sense. Whenever someone was just like, call me back, or hey, let's talk for a second, those few seconds before they know whatever it's going to be about, I'm always so nervous.
Yeah.
And even if it's nothing at all. But anyway, those lines, can we talk? It's just like, yes.
Yeah, and sometimes it's also like, you know exactly what they want to talk about, but it's just a precursor to like, for some reason, potentially.
Yeah.
Either you don't know what it's about, and that's just ambiguous anxiety, or you do know what it's about, and you're like, I don't have time for this. I don't want to, and/or I know we have to. Like, fine, sure, we can talk, which means you have something to say. Yeah. We cut back upstairs to That Timeline Daddy and Five sitting at the tiki bar now, enjoying a beverage. And he's pretty much That Timeline Daddy recognizes that Five, the first time they encountered each other in this timeline, outside of the party, he screamed that line as That Timeline Daddy was driving away after they scattered after the Majestic 12 meeting broke up. Mm-hmm. It was a line from Homer, a classic Homer line, in which in the original timeline in 89, in season 1, That Timeline Daddy used to always have, like, he actually educated them. They're very smart people. Yeah. And so one of the things he had them do was read, learn, recite Homer, all the classics. And Homer was one of the highlights. So that's what that was in an earlier episode that Five shouted out. And so in this meeting, That Timeline Daddy is like, why did you say that line from Homer? And so Five shares with him, like, you are our dad. We know each other, blah, blah. You taught us Homer. Like, I got it from you. And he says, Dad, we have 5 days now, is the countdown to the apocalypse that they're at. And he goes, Dad, we have 5 days. And I need answers from you. Like, I need your help. They talk about, That Timeline Daddy asks him, like, so this time jumping thing you can do, what happened when you tried to jump the first time? He goes, I went too far forward, ended up after the apocalypse, like 45 years in the future, something like that, got stuck. He was like, well, what about the next time? He was like, I went too far back, which is when he brought the whole family, all the Super Sibs, back to try and get in front of the season 1 apocalypse. But he went too far and scattered them. And so it is such sage advice. That Timeline Daddy is portrayed as kind of a cold-hearted character who's just about that business dough and transactions and power and leverage. But he gives Five some of the best advice. And he says, Well, it's less about decades and more about seconds. Start small with seconds. And he says so much could change in a second. You
Yeah.
can fall in love in a second. You could start a war in a second, right? Such sage advice. I'm like, yes. And you see it you see it land with 5 in a way, but you also see him kind of going like, not quite understanding the gravity of how important that advice is. I will say, without spoiling it, like that will definitely serve him well later on in season 2, like more than well. It is kind of the key in the answer that they came for, but he doesn't know it yet.
Right.
Which I think is so, on top of it being such just good advice. Yeah, start with seconds, not decades. You could change, so much could change in a second, which is also just so true.
It's good. That's good life advice.
Mm-hmm.
Good life advice.
Yep. And then we cut to Elliot. Elliot, I say it like that because he's about to have a real bad experience in this episode. Elliot, the owner of the electronic shop, in which has become the Batcave, he saw them all arrive in the alley right outside of his shop. So he's like unofficially part of the team now. He's met them all, sat in their meetings, helped them out. The next scene is Elliot coming home to an empty Super Sid Batcave. Nobody else is there. He's like gone shopping or something. He's got like a paper bag full of stuff, and he's returning home to an empty apartment. He's got a cat. It's there. It's like low-key giving him cat warnings of like, someone's here and someone is there. Someone is in the apartment skulking around in the shadows, and the viewer, you can see that as he comes home to his apartment. It's the 2 bad bros. And they're like, where is Diego? Because they have been manipulated also by the handler to be after Diego for killing their third now dead bad bro. So they're looking for him. They've tracked him back to that shop, the electronic shop. And he meets his demise, y'all.
It's kind of ugly too. Like, it's not like quick and done. It's like, I think it's like, it's gruesome. It's bad.
Yeah, it is gruesome because like even before they kill him, due to this quick snippet that they show you, that they like semi-torture him. Like they hold him up. They're like, their punches are like not Luther punches, but even the initial beating is like, you see his face and blood and spit. Is like, they're not taking it easy, nor are they taking their time. And they push him into that dentist chair that is in his loft, because his father, we know through the dialogue earlier in season 2 episodes, used to be, I think, acquired a bunch of stuff. Like he's got those nitrous canisters, he's got a dentist chair. I think his father was a part-time dentist and had that electronic shop. So he's got this dentist chair and these dentist tools. The 2 bad bros like punch him up, push him into this dentist chair, and then grab some dental tools and start like ripping out his teeth. And we also come to find that they like pierce his like head with all the tools. They like kill him.
Yeah. Bad. And it's just like, obviously he didn't deserve any of that. Like, it's just like, yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, it's rough. Rest in peace, Elliot. We loved you while we had you.
Yeah.
Wish you had some of that serum, huh? From that timeline daddy to bring you on back like they did Pogo in the last episode or 2 ago. So Elliot is gone. Super Sibs don't know that yet, but Elliot has been killed by the remaining two bad bros because they're in search of Diego and they think he has info and he doesn't give it up, so they kill him. We cut to Vanya and Lady Wife McGee, same night, but off in Lady Wife McGee's car, off on their own, parked somewhere, talking. Basically, like, Lady Wife McGee is like, it's not safe for people like us, basically, same-sex couples in that time to be out, which is a reality of history, right? It's barely safe for that, you know, those type of relationships for the haters and bigots who are out there now, right? That it's still a conversation. Shouldn't be? No. Should it ever be? No. Love who you love. But it's definitely something that Lady Wife McGee says in this scene. Like, it's just not safe for people like us to be out in the open. And I can't. Like, we can't do this. And Vanya is like trying to say, like, boo, I can protect you. You just have to trust me. Like, I got you. I got us. Low key, I got powers that no one can battle. No one of who you're worried about. But in the reality that Lady Wife McGee lives in, her husband is a very, we'll say it kindly and say it, traditional male in that time type. And we know through this dialogue that Lady Wife McGee shares with Vanya that Harlan Sr.'s brother, who also lives in this town, is like the sheriff or like has police ties. So like there's also that to be concerned with. He and is very much like Dave's uncle, very high bar bigot, if we will. But they talk about like, we can run away together, like for real, for real. We just gotta go. We gotta stay business as usual until we get out of here. But we can, and then we leave and we never look back. And I can protect you. And then they agree. Lady Wife McGee is like, I don't know why, but I trust you. And okay. And they agree. But we see as the viewer, the shot cuts to Harlan Sr. watching them in the dark from a distance. He knows what's up. And that's not good. Because they're making out and stuff. They're not just talking. They're like,
yeah, it's scary because it's just like you're just like, oh gosh, what's he gonna do with that information, you know? Because yeah, I mean, you already know that guy's drinking a lot, he's insecure, you know, that combination can lead to danger pretty quickly, you know. So
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. So like, it's such a juxtaposition of feelings in that scene because you're like so kind of happy for Vanya and Lady Wife McGee because they're seemingly now on the same page of like, we love each other, we want to be together, and we have agreed we can and are going to run away. We're going to be together, and we're going to run away together with Harlan Jr., right? They're not just going to leave Harlan Jr. So you're happy for that, but you're also like scared for them because you know that he knows what's up. And then we cut away. They leave us worried, and we cut away. And we cut to Luther and Diego returning back to Elliot's house, which again has become the Super Sid Batcave. So they return him back there after this meeting that has gone awry. Looks like no one's home. They're like, Elliot, where you at? Hello? They see blood on the floor. They are looking for him. They quickly find him dead, pierced with dental tools in the face in that dentist chair. And he is dead. On the top floor is where the dentist chair is. That's only super vital because of the visual at the end of this scene. And the shot pans over the railing of the second story where this dental chair is with Elliot's dead body in it onto the floor in the foyer below. And it says in a different language, of which is of Nordic descent, of the language of the Bad Bros.
Mhm.
I don't speak whatever language this is, but I wrote down the letters and the words of what it said, and I think it's Oga for Olga, which I think means just contextually eye for an eye.
Mhm.
So they killed one of theirs basically,
Yeah.
for their lost bad bro, because they think it was Diego.
Yeah.
And it's written in Elliot's blood on the floor, and it's like, damn, son, give Elliot a break.
Yeah, it's gruesome.
It's gruesome. And then we cut to the last scene of this episode, which is Five showing back up at the handler's hotel, now seemingly realizing he's out of the option he thought he had, which is that timeline daddy. Though again, we just mentioned he did get the answer he will in the end need. He just doesn't realize it yet. So he has surmised, I don't have any more options, and has shown up at the handler's hotel. She's been expecting him, right?
Yeah.
She's got plans in place. She knew he was going to show up.
Yeah.
Drink ready, knowing he now is going to accept her offer of killing the board of directors of the Bureau. And gives him the address. What was the town?
I think it's Oshkosh.
Yes, Oshkosh, Wisconsin in 1982.
Mhm.
And I don't think Lila is seen in the room in this shot, so I don't know if that's important or not, but just because they're a team, I guess it was worth saying, like, it's just the handler in the room that we see. Her and Five seemingly agree, like, this, you're coming to accept my offer? I knew you would. And she gives him the address in time, space, and location. And we're left going like, okay, we're going to end up seeing him kill this board of the Bureau here sometime in the future. So that's the end of the episode.
Mhm.
How good was that one? Super good. Pun intended.
It's fine.
So everyone watching, like, whoever is watching, I hope you're enjoying this channel and like kind of our reviews on this super awesome show.
This has been season 2, episode 6 of The Umbrella Academy.
Did you see that?
Did you see that?
What? Did you see it? Yay! Great. We did it.
Did you see that?